Uganda, 241,038 square kilometers of breathtaking landscape. The all-year-round lush vegetation. The pleasant climate that is influenced by the stunning topographical setup. This is the apt description that earns the country its popular name, the Pearl of Africa. Uganda's location right on the equator and its average altitude of over 1,200 meters above sea level greatly influence its climate and vegetation. The tropical rainforests provide well-distributed rainfall and cool temperatures punctuated by sufficient sunshine throughout the year. This pleasant climate is favorable for agriculture, the mainstay of the people of Uganda. The sector accounts for over 80% of the population's economic livelihood. People have always been aware of the weather patterns and planned their agricultural activities based on seasons. But over the last few years, the situation continues to change.
People are getting more and more disorganized even in their planning of activities. The farmers used to know the seasons for growing their crops, when to plan field activities, but this is increasingly becoming more and more difficult.
Climate change has manifested itself in different areas. At one time, low-lying areas have experienced prolonged drought, while at another time, the same area experiences unexpected torrential rains that cause flooding. But what is the cause of climate change?
We have natural processes where the climate can change naturally, like we have natural droughts. But then in the recent past, which has been proved scientifically, especially beginning from the industrialization of Europe, there is an observation of some phenomena that has led to a conclusion that some human activities have actually triggered this natural process to now be more pronounced.
The recent floods that devastated Teso region in eastern Uganda are generally believed to have been a result of the ongoing global warming, whose effect is already being felt in many countries, Uganda inclusive. The disaster, believed to have been the worst seen in the last 35 years, claimed 21 lives. 300,000 people were affected. Gardens were submerged, resulting into dire need for emergency food relief.
That rainfall was higher than that region normally receives. Now the catchment area for Teso is quite big, by that stretches up to Karamoja. So you can imagine if you have Sironko system, Kapchora system, then you have the Karamoja plains all sending water down. That's a lot of water going down. So that's what really caused those areas to be flooded.
The rural poor, whose livelihoods are dependent on natural resources directly, are most affected. This is Karamoja area, northeast of Uganda. It is part of the cattle corridor, a fragile ecosystem which gets drier as one moves northwards from the equator. It is inhabited by pastoralists who traverse the vast semi-arid land with their animals in search of pasture and water. Under normal conditions, the area experiences low annual rainfall. As a result, The pastoralists and agro-pastoralists have adapted to utilizing the available water for both their animals and their domestic need. The sparse vegetation also adapted to the conditions, hence providing pasture to the animals. In the last few years, however, the season has drastically changed.
Okay, the rain would come sometime between the month of April to about August. And the rivers would usually swell their banks, and dams would be there. And then after a short time, the rivers would dry because the water would flow away. But the dams, the water would remain for quite some time. But now what is happening is that apparently because of this torrential falls, which sweep the loosened soil as a result of the heat and the water working together, a lot of silt is also carried to these dams, and these dams have been silted. As a result, now they dry much earlier than before.
This phenomenon has also affected the water table, leading to situations where boreholes take long to yield water, and even some do not yield any at all. This borehole in Kadokini village, Panyagara sub-county, Kotido district, is one of the numerous ones that have dried up.
I think the water table has dropped, yes, because of the prolonged droughts and the little rain which comes in a short time, but is usually very heavy. And I think to the extent, our area here slopes down to the southwest, and a lot of the water runs very, very fast. So it doesn't get time to seep down to raise the water table up.
This is the riverbed of the Peth River in Kotido. Until 1995, it was the biggest river in Karamoja that sustained substantial amount of water even during the dry season. With the coming of the drastic climate change, the river now dries up faster. It is early hours of the afternoon, and 16-year-old Nakong is scooping water from Menswa riverbed in Panyagara to water her goats. At this time of the day, girls of her age are expected to be at school. For Nakong, she has to take care of the 50 family goats, a responsibility she cannot run away from at this time when there is dire scarcity of water. During the wet season, most of the water ends up running off, getting deposited in the riverbeds, and is eventually covered by sand.
More of the surface flows away, but some water seeps into the sand, so it filters this water right there up to the subsoil, which is a little bit clay. It remains there. So what these people do, they dig around the sand and reach the water level.
The Karamojong have for a long time used this adaptive method of getting water during drought. 10 years ago, it would have taken Nakong to walk a few meters away to dig up the water from a nearby riverbed. But today, she has to walk 3 miles to reach this location because the nearby river cannot yield any water. For the Karamojong, cattle are such an important asset they cannot live without them. It provides them with milk, blood, meat, but most importantly, it is a symbol of wealth with which each person's status is determined. The region also contributes to the national livestock economy. The prolonged drought forces the Karamojong to move long distances away from home to neighboring communities with their animals in search of pasture and water.
Now animals are very far away. They are in a place called Longor, very, very far. And that is the only dam now, which is at the border with the Choli, which is having water.
For a few who have remained, it is very hard to keep their animals alive and healthy. 43-year-old Lopeo Peter lives at Lokokili village in the outskirts of Kotido. He decided to give the healthy animals to his elder son to take them with him while he remained at home looking after the few that are aged and in poor health. But even those that remained cannot yield any milk because they virtually have nothing to feed on. To supplement the inadequate pasture, animals in Karamoja have also learned to adapt. Peter's children have to get up at dawn to go to the neighboring village pub to collect residues from a local brew known as ebutia, brewed from a mixture of sorghum and millet. The animals have no alternatives.
Animals now feed on things like, they call it adaka. This remains from beer, remains from marua, because the grass is dried up completely. And as I said, because of the climatic changes, where there's been so much heat, a lot of the soil has been loosened and it has been swept off. So even the dry grass cannot hold and remain there for the animals to eat.
The inevitable movement of these pastoralists to distant places no doubt affect the Karamojong social order and leaves the family behind more vulnerable to famine. It is the strong young men who go with the animals, leaving the women and the elderly to fend for themselves. Although the role of women is to get food for the family, it is simply nowhere to be found. For the elderly women, the story is different. Absence of cattle means absence of milk. They somehow have to find some food to survive on. During prolonged droughts, vegetation virtually dries out. One of the useful plants that survive is the valentine tree. Its leaves remain green. Because they can withstand dry conditions, valentine trees grow widely in Karamoja area. In time of crisis resulting into absence of milk, they become an important source of food. With the current prolonged dry spell, people, especially the elderly, have now turned to picking these leaves because they cannot afford to find a better alternative. The leaves are boiled to provide sauce to accompany sorghum bread if they are lucky to find some sorghum flour anyway. Although Karamoja is a semi-arid area, there used to be sufficient rains to enable food cultivation. For this matter, people would plan according to the seasons and plant sorghum, the major staple food here. In the last 10 years, however, sorghum gardens have suffered extreme conditions of erratic torrential rains that cause floods and also dry spells that scorch the soils, leading to drying up of the sorghum stems. Today, the granaries in most homesteads are empty, implying that whatever had been stored for the rainy days and starter seed has been consumed or sold.
These people have become more poor. They are even unable to send their children now to school. They can't afford 2 meals in a day. Just as a result of that. And I think they continue to suffer as a result of the climatic changes which impact on the animals. They are supposed to have the animals multiply in numbers when they are good times. And when the drought comes, they sell these animals. But unfortunately, these animals now, as they die, they are not being replenished easily. So they get less food. Unfortunately, one of those animals in that regard, which were being used as a kind of a current account, were the goats and sheep. But there is also a disease which came, a very bad disease which, if we allow it to go down south, it will be very difficult for the country to eradicate. And a quarantine has been put in place here. So they are not selling these small ruminants. So that has also impacted on them. And it is also as a result of these climatic changes that these diseases have come in here. Because they were diseases of the drier areas of southern Sudan and northern Kenya.
International agencies have intervened to avert this situation. Oxfam has had programs in the region for the last 40 years.
We are seeing that climate change actually has an impact on poor people, a direct impact on poverty. And that's one of the reasons why we think Oxfam has a role to play on climate change, and climate change specifically with regards to poor people and how poor people adapt to the changes in climate.
Other international agencies, such as World Food Programme, have also been here since the 1960s, when food distribution would take place as a result of the 2-year drought pattern that people knew and expected. This pattern, however, has changed dramatically over the last 5 years, necessitating more frequent interventions.
In 2005, we did food distribution to the ordinary population. That was as a result of drought experienced in 2004. Then again, in 2006, we had to do another food distribution as a result of this drought. And then in 2007 as well, food distribution took place as a result of the drought. So you can see that pattern of twice or every 2 years has kind of been broken. It's evidence that there's been climate change in the region.
The impact of the crisis in Karamoja has created some kind of spillover effect. Over the last 5 years, Kampala city has been hit by an influx of Karamojong women and children who parade along the streets to beg. These women claim that they came to Kampala in search for food to escape from the raging hunger in Karamoja. Unfortunately, life is not any better here. They end up in slums, sharing crowded shanty structures. The only accessible food is scavenging spillovers from traders' trucks that carry produce for sale in the city markets and discarded chicken intestines picked from the restaurant bins. Rwenzori Ranges, popularly known as the Mountains of the Moon, a huge landform that straddles the two Great Lakes region countries of Uganda and the DRC. It is a snow-capped mountain whose slopes are covered by tropical rainforests and numerous glaciers. Rwenzori Ranges greatly influences the climate and weather of the low-lying areas of Kasese, Kabarole, Bundibujo, and to a great extent, areas across the border in the DR Congo. Although the mountain slope areas experience cool temperatures, the low-lying areas usually have higher temperatures with rich, fertile soils favoring crop cultivation. For this reason, Kasese has been among top producers of food and cash crops not only in the region but the entire country. In the recent past, however, the region has been experiencing climate change phenomenon. The volume of the water in the rivers that fed the low-lying agriculture-rich areas has drastically reduced.
Continuously, our sources of the rivers is getting a problem, which is slightly reducing on the water coming from the sources we think are in Mount Rwenzori. We are expecting a disaster of our rivers completely drying out. That one I can't refute. They will completely dry out because the trend has been so negative consistently until now we have a stream instead of what we used to call a river.
This is River Nyamwamba. It used to be the biggest in the area that provides much of the water crucial for agriculture in Kasese area. Although its waters would decrease seasonally, the riverbed would not be exposed to the current level. Environmentalists predict an impending serious decline in the volume of snow on top of Mount Rwenzori affected by the current prevailing warming.
By 2025, if we continue melting at that rate, there will be no snow on the mountain Rwenzori.
The gradual climate change has had serious impact on agriculture in Kasese and the neighboring areas, considering that approximately 90% of the population here depend entirely on agriculture.
Our farmers used to have particular crops they were keen on, and they were always timing and knew that at a certain stage we are harvesting this, and they predict we shall have food stocks to this level. Then for the cash crops, they are able to know that at the end of the season we should be able to get this and that. But then with time, from the early 90s really, things have changed. The farmers are no longer able to predict when the rains are coming. And this has caused them, sometimes they plant, as soon as it rains,
the crops come up, then the drought sets in, then they dry again. They are either forced to plant again, but even when they do plant, then the rains don't take as long.
Maize is both a food and cash crop in Kasese area. Because of the past favorable conditions, maize growing was among the top crops from which farmers earned good income. The current changing climate has not spared the production. 50-year-old Geoffrey Kanani is a subsistence maize farmer in Kanamba village, Karusandara sub-county. Last year, he planted maize on his 1-acre piece of land, expecting a good yield. But the unexpected prolonged drought seriously affected the yield.
Can you see how small it is? We used to get very big one, long maize and big. So now you can see what I am going to get. In 1 acre, I normally get something like 12 bags. But this time, it seems I may get about 4. Like this one. This one was could start from here up to here. So now all this is nothing.
With this miserable yield, Geoffrey will find it difficult to support his family of 8.
Of course, my children may not go to school, and they will get we have a lot of famine.
Ironically, drought has not been Geoffrey's only problem. In an attempt to diversify, he planted an orchard of 1.5 acres. 5 months later, Kasese experienced unexpected heavy rains that caused floods in Karusandara, which devastated his fruit trees.
Started raining, poured very heavy again, causing the whole of this place to flood. So you can see how these trees are. It's because of water. They were very nice.
Cotton growing is another important economic activity in Kasese. The area ranks among top cotton growing districts in Uganda. Most of the cotton comes from subsistence farmers who utilize their small plots of land, but climate change has not spared the sector either. The small-scale farmers have painfully borne the brunt of the phenomenon.
We used to do dry planting, whereby we were sure that by 15th August the rains will start. So farmers would prepare the land in June and start planting in July before it rains. Then 2 weeks after their planting, the rains would set in and we get very good germination. But today it's not the case.
42-year-old Simeon Baluku is a subsistence cotton farmer in Bwera. He has been growing cotton on his 1-acre piece of land in Nyaruzigati for 6 years now. This has been his major source of income to support his big family of 12. In a good yield, Baluku would harvest 500 kilograms. In the last few years, he has experienced very poor yields, which he attributes to the changing climate. The situation is not any different for Faith Kabanyaka. She rented a 1-acre piece of land in Mubuku, where she has been growing cotton for the last 5 years. In a single season, she would get 500,000 shillings. Things have changed, and this year's yield has been a disaster for her. Climate changes in Kasese area have not only affected the economic livelihood of the people. They also come with not only increase in disease, but also the creation of favorable conditions for certain diseases in areas where they used not to be. This is Kagando Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in the area. Here, health workers have recorded a steady increase in malaria cases and other waterborne diseases in the last 5 years. Dr. Frank Asimwe is the hospital's medical superintendent. He has worked as a surgeon in this hospital for the last 10 years. During this period, he has observed a significant shift in trends of some diseases.
A good amount of malaria which we see, and we see most of it in the children who are seen on this ward, is seen now amongst the highland dwellers who previously did not used to experience a lot of malaria. It was mostly among the lowland dwellers. Maybe the other aspect which has also changed is in the distribution of diarrheal diseases, mostly seen in the lowlands, but it's also on the increase. And on the surgical ward, we are seeing some awkward intestinal diseases. The malaria is due to the increase in the temperature, and the mosquitoes are able to survive where they never used to survive before.
Lake Victoria, Africa's largest freshwater lake and the second largest in the world. The immense water mass that straddles the three East African countries of Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania covers an area of over 35,000 square kilometers, constituting 80% of the country's entire water cover. No doubt its size and location across the equator greatly influences the climatic conditions around it.
Such a water body, inland lake, is a good open surface which is a source of moisture. When it evaporates, it goes into the atmosphere and eventually goes through that cycle up to the point of condensation, and clouds form, and we eventually get the rain within the Lake Victoria basin.
In the recent years, Lake Victoria has experienced drops in water level as a result of climate change, a situation that has had diverse effects on its biodiversity, climate of the surrounding area, economic livelihood of the people that depend on the resources, and their social order.
And before climate change, we were getting rainfall almost throughout the year around the Lake Victoria basin. But now, of course, things are changing. The water levels are changing in the lake, and this is causing a lot of problem, of course, right from the fish.
Fisheries resources are among the most significant natural endowments in Uganda, not only because of their magnitude, but also because they represent a major source of protein, in addition to employment and incomes for over 1 million people. Fish production on Lake Victoria is in excess of 200,000 metric tons annually. It is estimated that over 150,000 people on the Ugandan side are directly involved in the industry as a source of livelihood. In the last 10 years, climate change effects have not spared Lake Victoria. On many occasions, the presence of excessive heat has caused extra evaporation, bringing about drop in the water levels. But what are the implications?
There will be less food for fish since the nutrient status of the waters would have decreased. And because of that, the food for fish is less, and then also fish don't get enough food. The fishermen don't get enough fish, and in that case, the direct income of fishermen is related to too many fishermen. Therefore, chasing too few fish is reduced. The fishermen get less money.
Wetlands along the fringes of the lake provide good environment for fish nursery. They are also places where fish finds most of its feed. The prolonged drought that prevailed from 2002 to 2005 caused great loss of water, a situation that greatly affected fish population.
We lost a lot of biodiversity. As you may know, that Lake Victoria is perhaps almost an international laboratory where there has been adaptive radiation of species, especially a species of fish called cichlids. And some of these cichlids, they have refuge here in those small satellite lakes. Now, when they dried up, we lost biological germplasm that experienced evolution for quite a number of years, for thousands of years.
Uganda depends on hydroelectricity-generated power at the Owen Falls Dam on River Nile. Because the Nile draws most of its waters from Lake Victoria, the critical water level drop in Lake Victoria greatly affected power generation, causing green power shortage to industries. This resulted in low production in almost all sectors, impacting negatively on the country's economy. Kampala City, Uganda's capital. It is a city whose peripheries to the south and southwest border with Lake Victoria. Although it's popularly known as the city built on numerous hills, some areas are low-lying, originally dominated by wetlands that are systematically connected to the lake. Today, a big chunk of these wetlands has been encroached on by human activities, especially settlements, a situation that has made them highly prone to flooding during the heavy prolonged rains. In the late 90s, these areas of Kalerwe, Bwaise and Chisenyi started experiencing severe floods. Most of these areas are occupied by low-income earners whose quality of life is very low. This phenomenon continues to occur with the unexpected erratic rains. During the floods, the destruction and loss of property is enormous. Sheikh Abdu Musoke is a tailor residing and operating in Kalerwe, Mayinja zone. He moved here 2 years ago with his wife and 3 children and rented this place, which doubles both as his residence and his business premises. While Abdu concentrates on the sewing business, his wife attends to the small grocery. This month, they're able to operate and earn because it's a dry season. But last year, their premises were hit by floods that destroyed both their household property and stock, paralyzing their business. The situation is compounded by the presence of a large population of people and the fact that most of these areas are slummy with unplanned structures, poor sanitary conditions and the absence of proper drainage. These are conditions favorable for disease outbreak.
There are quite a number of health issues that are related to climate change, especially here in Kampala. If I zero here in Kampala, the most important is cholera. Cholera comes actually with rains. The way people here live, and such that actually they don't have good pit latrines and they don't have also good toilets. So what they do, they build their pit latrines up and leave a hole, and once it rains, they offload so that actually hoping that everything goes with the rain. Unfortunately, the stool actually go with the water and flood the homes of people. And as people are washing out this, cleaning their houses, throwing away water and so forth, so what happens that sometimes they either lick their hands or eat without washing their hands properly. In other words, they go and eat stool. And by eating stool, of course, these people get cholera. And when they get cholera, then we get outbreaks of cholera. And this has happened, for example, in 2006, the biggest cholera from 2006, in November up to 2007, March 10th actually, when we had really big epidemic of cholera of about 1,000 patients. In fact, we lost about 1% of those patients.
This is the National Meteorological Center in Entebbe. It is the center that is responsible for collection, analysis and dissemination of data and information on climate and climate matters countrywide. Although traditionally communities knew their local climate well and it was predictable, weather and seasonal forecasts did not make any difference. Today, under climate change, the situation is radically different. But not all is lost. The Meteorological Department, in partnership with the National Environment Management Authority, together with the Ministry of Agriculture, have attempted to draw up strategies aimed at finding ways of coping with the challenges of climate change.
We work with our partners, other government departments, Ministry of Agriculture, the Meteorology Department. I have to assure you that the meteorology department predicted all these phenomena. Ministry of Agriculture interpreted that into what they call agriculture advisory. We disseminated this to districts, but naturally the process will be, we didn't budget for this. Meanwhile, the disaster is coming. But as an authority, you've done your work.
Although this effort shows the will of government to provide interventions, lack of sufficient resources, absence of public awareness, which culminates into misunderstanding issues pertaining to climate change, compounds the negative effects of the problem.
How we cope up with this change is normally not really adequate, given reason that we have most numbers of people living under poverty, and then you find that we don't have immediate response to address some of these issues, and that's why it is a global concern.
Yet, this country's share of the responsibility of greenhouse emissions is negligible.
Our emissions for greenhouse gases is almost insignificant. Are we all together? But when we talk about being impacted, we also take a very big share, because you saw the floods, the droughts, the melting of the ice on the Rwenzori. All these are the impacts. The malaria shifting to higher belts in areas which used not to have malaria. So all these are impacts which we are receiving as a country, but we are not the contributors of this. But since we are signatory to these conventions, we also have to abide by reducing on our emissions.
Uganda, like other least developed countries, does not have a choice but to resign to her fate and instead plan for adaptive mechanisms. But how should these countries adopt?
Our government authorities need to come nearer to the people, and assist them in what we can do. The problem is that even the local government functioning is not yet very much clear on what we can do on climate change.
For poor countries like Uganda to be able to cope with and survive the effects of climate change, there is an urgent need to face the bitter realities of the times and integrate climate change issues in policy making and development planning at all levels, particularly for the rural and urban poor who are more prone to the adverse effects.